How's it going, everyone? My name is Michael SK, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry Chapter 4. In the last episode, we lost consciousness, as you can probably tell here. We were in a bit of a tussle. We were able to figure out where the minister's missing grandson was, or where he was kidnapped to. The kidnappers unfortunately got away, but we can pretty much theorize at this point that there is a connection between the Onagafuchi Guardians, or more specifically the Sonozaki family, and this whole incident. Let's see what happens now. That was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this was my first time actually experiencing it.
もしもし、大丈夫ですか?
Realizing that I was awake, a young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seems my body language had told him I was conscious. My head was wrapped in bandages. The scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from the intense pain shooting all throughout me.
起きないで横になっていてください。頭をだいぶ殴られたようですからね。24時間は特に安静にして容体を見守りたいところです。ここは私の診療所です。入江と申します。よろしく。
I remember that this young doctor was the one in the car headed the opposite way earlier.
誰かいませんか、大石さんは。ああ、呼んできましょう。診療所の中は禁煙なんで、表で吸ってもらってるんです。
Dr. Irie left the room to go call Ushi. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, with the voices of the Higurashi hurtling the cool temperature. Or heralding, I guess. And I felt the tone of the Higurashi's voices was comforting. Eventually, I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Aoshi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What had happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The door to the room flew open, following Dr. Irie and Ueshi to enter.
じゃあ命に別状はないんでしょ?
ないとお約束はできません。
We were shot.
頭に受けた傷は所見だけでは判断が危険なのです。
わかりました、わかりました。ちょいと彼と二人で話がしたいんですが、よろしいですかね?
ええ、どうぞ。何かありましたらお呼びください。
Ueshi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door.
いかがですか、お具合は。
慣れないことをしたんで、全身がボロボロです。
Ueshi brought over a folding chair that was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed.
犯人たちは逮捕されましたか?
残念ながら、とっくに県外へ逃げたか、村人にかくまわれているかのどちらかでしょうね。まあ、逃がしはしませんが。
大臣の孫は?
署で保護しています。ただ、東京のあなたのご同僚から一切の聴取は取るなと釘を刺されたらしいですよ。しげちゃんが憤慨してましたっけ?
The kidnapping was a confidential matter, so his custody was also probably being kept under wraps. How the kidnapping of the minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it had never happened, would be handled by the brass. If this case ended without the nation going into an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility that the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out, but something like that was no longer my concern. My role in this case was over.
ご迷惑をおかけします。公安ってやつはいやらしいところだって思ってるでしょう。
Honestly, it does seem a little whack. I mean, at least compared to what we've been seeing out of Ueshi and these guys out here in the countryside.
思いません、思いません。
Then again, what do I know?
お互い日の丸から給金もらって仕事してるだけですよ。
True that. Ueshi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Ueshi, but now that feeling was gone completely.
今回の事件、 隠さないで大事にしてくれた方がこっちは都合がいいんですけどね。そうすれば黒幕の園崎本家に少しは迫れるんですが。
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Now they can't use this in a legal sense.
まあ適当に迫ったところで圧力がかかるんでしょうがね。やれやれです。
大石さんは園崎本家に今後も戦いを？
まさか。いろいろと黒い噂こそ絶えませんがね。園崎家に恨みがあるわけじゃありませんので、君子危うきに近寄らない方がいいんですよ。
Yeah, I'm sure that'll work well like 4 or 5 years later.
ね。
Higurashi laughed happily and I couldn't help but laugh along.
あ、そうだそうだ。さっき県警から署に連絡があったそうです。あなたのご同僚が名古屋に到着したそうで、今車でこちらへ向かっているそうです。あなたは名誉の負傷ですから東京へ引き上げだそうですよ。そんなわけです。はあ、お疲れ様でした。あなたの沖宮での仕事は無事終了です。
I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words.
大石さんのご協力に深く感謝します。あなたに支払った協力金は無駄にはなりませんでしたね。
あら、冗談のつもりだったんだけどな。
Higurashi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my shirt.
これは協力金の返済じゃないですよ。私からあなたへのお小遣いです。この辺は地酒がうまいんでね。東京へのお土産にこいつで買っていくといいでしょ
う。Higurashi flashed me a grin.
もしもあなたの傷が軽いようなら、東京へ帰る前にぜひ声をかけてくださいよ。おやつさんも佐藤さんもぜひあなたともう一度卓を囲みたいと言ってましたからね。
Oh, I have a feeling that, that's not gonna happen ever again.
やれやれ。参ったな。
今度はこっちも小細工抜きです。純粋に楽しもうじゃないですか。
よく言いますよ。原則の警官があんなに恋様ができるなんて世も末です。
私どもとね、対等以上に打てるメンツにはなかなかお会いできないもんです。あなたが東京に帰るのが惜しいですよ。
When I heard the words going back to Tokyo from Ushi, I was reminded once again that I was relieved from my duties. Soon Yukie will be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend the delivery that I had at one time given up on. When I thought that, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see Yukie at once.
少し傷が重いふりをして沖宮にしばらく滞在しません？いいお店をいろいろ紹介しますよ。もちろんおごれなんて言いません。
申し訳ないですが、それはまたの機会にします。妻の出産日が近いんでね、早く帰りたいんです。
ありゃりゃ、それは知らなかった。それじゃあこんなとこにいちゃいけない。早く帰らないといけません。
For a while after that, she asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me. That's a good way to get your mind off the pain.
さて、具合はどうです？おきれいそうですか？
ええ、おかげさまで悪くないです。
Am I mistaken or did we get shot?
立って歩いても全然平気ですよ。
I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Ushi.
いえいえ、Hinamizawaの病院では落ち着かないでしょうと思いまして。入江の先生は一晩泊まらせたいみたいなこと言ってますが、犯人もまだ捕まってませんし、一応ここはあなたにとっては敵地になりますからね。
この病院は安全ではない。
No, I
という
think
ことですか。
I'd say that this hospital is safe. From our previous experiences. I don't know. I mean, any place with medical supplies and a nice young doctor like what we have here is probably a safe location.
まあ、入江の先生も多少は社会的信用のあるお人です。ここにいる限りは何もないとは思いますが、 赤坂さんの気分的にめいらないかという方が問題ですね。
I'd relaxed a bit now that things had progressed this far, but it was exactly as Ueshi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. With the only thing left for me to do was leaving, the chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. Excuse me, but that didn't mean I was completely safe.
そうですね。横になっているだけなら、ホテルのベッドでも同じな気がします。
そうでしょう、そうでしょう。私もその方がいいと思います。
At that moment, I caught a glimpse of the clock over Oshi's shoulder. It was the evening. The hours when I could call Yukie at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would soon be back at her side.
ちょっと、ユキエの病院に電話してきます。ロビーに公衆電話とかはありませんか？
新婚さんはそういうの豆だな。確か会計の脇にあったと思います。ここで待ってますから、いってらっしゃい、いってらっしゃい。
Ueshi, laughing while saying that he was jealous, opened up the window and pulled out a cigarette, even though he was in a hospital room. Appreciative at how considerate Ueshi was, I set out to the lobby to find the phone. I have a bad feeling for some reason. I don't know why. Like, I seriously have no reason to feel worried, but here I am, feeling worried. The lobby was just a short distance down the hallway from the hospital room. I thought that this hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course it was nothing compared to the general hospital Yukie was admitted to. Running inside a hospital wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. Well, this might actually be lucky for me. I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about, but it would still be embarrassing to have someone listen to the conversation between me and Yukie. Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. Digging around in my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. I was calling Tokyo from here, so I would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver and inserted a coin and dialed the number for Yukie's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. I don't know what sort of noise that's supposed to be. I guess that's just the phone ringing? The number for Yukie's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing it in inevitably took some time. Normally, it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently any time was precious. However, I felt that something was strange as I was dialing in the number. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Somehow I felt like I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone, and without feeling a response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out from the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent.
なんだこれ。断線でもしてるのかな。
While I was wasting time like this, the amount I had to spend talking with Yukie shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient.
すみません。
I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass, so I called out. There was an immediate response, and a man who seemed like a pharmacist came over.
はいはい。どうなさいましたか？
すみません。この電話の調子がおかしくて、ちょっと見てもらえますか？
The man came over and tried testing various things with the receiver pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this was someone who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just as I didn't know much about phones, neither would he.
あれ？なんだこれ？
The man held up the cord that connected to the phone to the wall. It's been cut. Oh boy. It was completely severed.
なんだこれ？参ったな。
What? People use that turn of phrase?
これじゃ電話会社の人に直してもらわないとどうにもならないですね。電話でしたら事務室のを使います？
I didn't want the people in the hospital office around while I was talking.
近所に公衆電話はありませんか？
ここを出て道なりに行くと商店街に出ます。そこのどこかの角のタバコ屋にあったような気がするな。行けば見つけられると思いますよ。
I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you can tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how you looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside. But that's where the impetuousness of youth came in. Choosing the chance to talk to Yukie for even a little longer, I headed outside in my current state. Ah, to be young. and to not have shame. Following the road to the shopping district, should be able to find one soon enough. With only those 2 lines as my guide, I ran outside the gates of the hospital. With the village nestled in a valley, when the sun set, it got dark quickly. The sparse streetlights lit up enough to start attracting moths. The Higurashi, knowing the time for their chorus was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person at the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was I just getting further away? Just as I was about to be crushed by the wave of uncertainty towering over me, I found a shop on the corner with cigarettes written on a small sign. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I had heard at the hospital, set next to the counter of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch, so I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have much time left, though. But it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yukie that my job was done, and I would be coming home soon. Picking up the receiver, I slid a coin down the slot. But I felt that something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting in the coin one more time. But there was absolutely no response. We're about to get fucking murdered. This phone was dead. It couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt along the cord that protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hands found at the end of a completely severed line. What is this? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. It seemed that the cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some sort, and I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut. That's not good.
すみません。すみません。
Opening up the booth window of the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there were the sounds of somebody plodding down some stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding and lethargic steps for some reason only served to make me more frantic.
タバコですかいね。小さまでねんと、わがねのしゃ。
タバコを買いたいわけじゃないんです。この電話が。
Realizing that saying the phone was broken and asking them to take a look at it was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words.
この電話が壊れてるみたいなんで、別の公衆電話があるところを教えてもらいたいのですが。
The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly as if chewing on the meaning of my words. It seemed that she wouldn't understand until she had digested things thoroughly.
電話、壊れてますかいね。そんな難儀だわ。
Why is everyone saying that?
他の公衆電話を当たってください。
The old lady directed me to another payphone that seemed quite a ways away. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right here that I could use, I would only be able to tell Yukie goodnight with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone, which I didn't know the exact distance to. If I was of a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would have been the natural thought process. But at that moment, I had become somewhat stubborn for some reason. Unable to use the phone in the hospital, and coming out here and still being unable to use one, there was no mistaking that I had become quite insistent on using a phone.
どうもありがとうございます。その電話ボックス、探してみます。
Refusing her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. Damn, she was really just going at it. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was quite far away, it would be easy to find. If I just followed this road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'll admit that I was quite steadfast about calling Yukie, but there were days when I was just tired or busy, when I wouldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries, and I was dead tired. On top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be strange at all if today was one of those days I didn't call her. But having twice been foiled trying to call her, had I become hot-headed about it? Was I like a dog who was being told to stay with a piece of food dangled in my face?
何やってんだろうな。
Even so, I somehow couldn't quell the uneasy feeling sitting in the pit of my stomach. It was like that with the hospital phone, and the same with the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicated that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them. But who? And for what reason? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt, so I tried to push the thought aside. How much had I run so far, The scenery around me was no longer that of a shopping district, with residential buildings scattered about the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly out too far for a quick phone call, and it was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw at the tobacco shop. It might almost be time. I had run for quite a bit, so my breathing had grown quite ragged. If I had just wanted to hear Yukie's voice, I should have just thrown away my reservations and borrowed the phone in the office. That's exactly what I'm thinking. We're kind of foolish. I regretted it a little. Well then, was it about time to give up? Just when I thought that, I saw the light in front of me. I had finally found it. It was a phone booth. It seemed that the light in the phone booth had recently been changed, as it was shown with a vivid white light. Although in the gloom of Hinamizawa, it was nothing more than a gathering spot for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. As my hand touched the door to open the phone booth, I realized that I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was right now, but even if it was just for a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yukie. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without even giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. I was worried that this phone cord might be severed as well. How was the cord in this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as they ran around or along the corner into the ceiling. At a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wondered if it was popular in Hinamizawa to cut the cords of payphones as some sort of tasteless prank. I've never heard of that shit. However, right now on TikTok, there's a beautiful trend that's involving students of all ages to vandalize restrooms, so who am I to say? It might be prudent to talk to Oishi-san about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine. This time. Pulling out a coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. And then something happened. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ear, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was more than a slightly unpleasant feeling, it felt almost sickening. To verify the source of my displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance.
なんだよ。これ。
The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the phone had been ripped apart, the tip of the cable swaying in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as a raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way up the small of my back. It was a type of dread. At that moment, I heard the crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside into the darkness. I steeled myself and stepped out of the phone booth. Who's there? The inside of the booth, was lit with that strong light, which might have made it warmer in there. Just stepping outside, I could feel a chill wash over me. And there was the silhouette of a person. A small silhouette.
君は
Uh-oh, it's Rika. The long hair of that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze.
怪我人が病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
I mean, it's not that we necessarily snuck out, it's just, we ran out. Somewhere in my head, I knew who this girl was. I didn't have any basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl.
ねえ、赤坂。
Damn, I really needed some water there. She, Rika Furude, said that almost like it was a warning.
君が電話のコードを。
That's not really much of an answer there, Rika-chan. I'm kind of worried here, Rika-chan. Her expression remained unchanged, and my question was left unanswered. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt that she affirmed my suspicions.
どうしてこんなことをするんだどうして
The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things out, but she didn't seem very afraid.
もうどうにもならないことです。
I interpreted her words as meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital. Excuse me. But thinking about it, that would have been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that if the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, there would be the illusion that... Oh, geez, sorry, I'm dying. Excuse me. There would be the illusion that time had stopped, that water is really going down strong.
気味悪く思っているのがよくわかる。
I mean, not really. It's just I'm concerned.
ああ、いや、そんなことないよ。
My denial came out almost like a bad piece of compost for a poetry slam? I'm sorry? Oh, like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam. I'm sorry. But her words were right on the mark. I really fucked that sentence up. I had always felt something ominous and uncanny about her, ever since her strange threats at the shrine. Uh-oh. She had noticed that my expression was contrary to my words, seemingly laughing at the gap between them.
赤坂の怖がり。
Wait, but this isn't the other voice that we heard. Unless it is.
怖がってなんかいないよ。
Being laughed at by this small child didn't sit well with me. So I said that.
もう電話を探しても手遅れの時間です。
そうだな。
She didn't even have to say it. I was absolutely too late. I might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late. I had no option but to give up for today. Once I decided that, my unhealthy obsession with phones suddenly faded. Even I thought that it was strange that I was that obsessed. That strange obsession was gone. I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. I mean, just look at what I'm wearing, or what I was wearing. It wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals, my head wrapped in bandages and my body completely soaked in sweat. It was a wonder that the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. With wanting to hear Yukie's voice as my motive, I was trapezed, or however the fuck you're supposed to say that word. We were something around the town the entire evening. I didn't know whether to call it the follies of youth or simply plain embarrassing. What is that word? I had trapsed? We've done something around the town. In any case, it was all I could do but to laugh at myself.
もうこれで今夜赤坂がすることは何もないです。
Yep, time to go to sleepy.
そうだな。もう何もないよ。おとなしく病院へ引き上げるさ。
それがいいのですよ。病院への道はわかりますですか？
わかるつもりだよ。
She waved her little hand as I began to head back the way I came. She began to follow alongside me. Looking at her face, I could see that she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost.
リカちゃんの家もこっちの方向なのかい？
なのですよ。
こんな時間に一人で表を歩いてると、ご両親に怒られたりしないかい？
別に怒られませんです。今日はご両親は忙しい日なので、僕のことなど忘れていますですよ。
Well, that's blunt.
それでも帰った方がいい。きっと怒るよ。
それでも赤坂とおしゃべりする方が面白いのでいいのです。
She said that with a face free from worry as she looked up at me once more and smiled. When she showed me that smile, the eerie feelings surrounding her faded. But even then, she was still as mysterious to me as ever. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier, but it was much darker than before, and with the point of view changed on that return trip, I wasn't very confident that this actually was the corner I turned at. There's no mistake, it had to be this corner. I mean, yeah, we've seen this CG before, we're on the right track. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed onto my clothes.
赤坂は病院へ戻るのではないのですか？
もちろん戻るつもりだよ。道間違えた？
A short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning of the walk to the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on. I'm very curious to see where this is going. I don't want to end it here. We need to keep going. Plus, it's a little too early. We just hit the 30-minute mark a little bit ago. We have to keep pressing on, just a little bit.
電話のコードを切って回ってたのリカちゃんだろ？ダメだよ。もうしちゃ。
僕には何のことかよくわかりませんのですよ。
本当にかい？
She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face.
ニパー。
No, that's not working on me today. It was obvious she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers was just made me want to forgive her. Ah, I'm gonna be a horrible father, aren't I? That momentary lapse in tension was erased by her next words. Uh-oh.
孫、無事に見つかってよかったです。
Yeah, you're not wrong, but also you shouldn't know that. You're outing yourself. It's like she doesn't care. Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I had already learned this from Sato-san's info, didn't I? And this girl, no. This entire village knew everything since the moment I set foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end I chose not to. With everything being known already, there is no point in me feigning ignorant. Well, again, hold up, you dumb bitch. There's the fact that we're in enemy territory and Oishi-san doesn't know where the fuck we're at?
なんとかね。
それはよかったです。これで東京に帰れますですよ。
ありがと
赤坂の怪我はひどいのですか？
う。さあ、ひどいのかどうか、医者の診察を聞いてないからわからないな。
Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remember being told to lie down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. Did that mean bed rest?
怪我人は病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
電話のコードだって切っちゃいけないんだぞ。
僕には何のことやらわからないのです。
じゃあこっちだって何のことかわからないや。
As we played dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If anybody saw us laughing at each other like this, it would probably bring a smile to their lips.
赤坂が生きてこの村を出られる確率は決して高くありませんでした。
Yeah, that's a very natural thing to bring up.
僕は赤坂に死んでほしくはないので、生きて村を出ることができて嬉しいです。
リカちゃん、最初っから私の正体は知ってたんだろ？
She said nothing but gave a firm nod.
なら、分かっていると思うけど、私たちはこの村の、どちらかというと、敵の部類に入ると思う。なのに君は、いろいろと忠告してくれたね。
That's right. She said it at that time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that.
なら、私は君に感謝するべきなのかもしれないね。
感謝した方がいいのですよ。僕は命の恩人なのです。
Saying that, she puffed up her chest proudly. She said it jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. She said those words with such an adorable smile that it took a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. I'd been to this place before. The Guardian's office was there. It was the stone steps leading up to the Furude Shrine. Why are we going here? When I passed by before, I was so focused on finding a phone booth, I hadn't realized where I was.
確か、この神社がリカちゃんの家だったよね。
まあ、そんなものです。
Looking up at the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit and energetic voices could be heard. Excuse me. What was going on?
今日はお祭りの日なのですよ。
お祭り？
Oh no.
Hinamizawa 村の唯一で一番のお祭り。
Oh no.
綿流しのお祭りです。
Oh no.
綿流し？
Is he not gonna say cotton drifting? Or I guess that's just what that means
祭
anyways.
りなんて名ばかりのつまらないものですよ。見ますですか？
She asked bluntly. But seeing that I looked interested, she climbed up a couple of steps, and motioned for me to come. I was only going to go back and sleep anyways. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go with her on a little detour. We're again in enemy territory. Yeah, right there, in the hostile territory that was this village. I didn't know what would happen if I ventured down a side road without Ushi. Even though I thought of this village like that, when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt that as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. And that's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of the Onigafuchi Guardian's territory. Climbing up to the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks in the village, or from the village, no, the executives of the Guardians, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I can only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I'd ever seen actually.
ね、つまんないお祭りでしょ。
これは確かにお祭りには見えないね。
Oh, it definitely changes over the years.
大昔からずっと続いてきたお祭りですが、見ての通り、すっかり寂れてしまったのですよ。
As if to chide the old folk, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It wasn't just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival.
これじゃ祀られる神様も気の毒だな。
こんなみっともないお祭りも5、6年もすると村中が総出でやってきて、
Yeah, that's true.
ちゃんと儀式も真面目にやる立派なお祭りになるのですよ。
That is also true. What she said was not much, or so much wishful thinking as it was the telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she was simply reporting the results. And that's how it sounded. Even though it was baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through a copse of pine trees, a strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had shown me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery.
こうして眺めると、この村ものどかそうに見えますのです。
She said that with an indifferent look on her face.
君は先日、この村は絶対にダムに沈むことはないと、そう断言したね。
She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair.
あれは、あの時点でもう、大臣が要求に応じていたという意味だったんだね。
She spun around, her gaze meeting mine. But she said nothing. She spoke nothing. That would neither confirm nor deny what I had just said. Well, yeah, because then she would, be admitting to it.
多分、今回の事件は、闇から闇へ葬られる。本庁上層部は、多分、大臣のスキャンダルが公になって、トラブルになることを望まないと思う。
さもないと、孫を殺すぞと脅したに違いないのです。
で、大臣との交渉が成功し、孫は解放された。
孫を助けたのは赤坂ですよ。
どうだろう。発端となったあの財布の発見、あれ自体がすでに出来すぎだったように思う。
Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I felt something was odd. Ueshi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. Maybe we didn't get shot. I felt like they put up quite a fight, but that might have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't just say, "Here you go," and return the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized that this was a kidnapping case and were moving in on it. And that's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. So the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary. Now I get it, 100%.
僕には難しいことはよくわかりません。
同感だな。私にだって難しいことはよくわからない。だが、一つ確実なことがある。君が言った通りってことさ。この村はダム湖になんか沈まない。ダム計画なんてそのうちなくなってしまうってことさ。
And that wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that I had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. No, it's understandable, 100%. But, you know, freedom, am I right? America. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind.
でも、よかったじゃないか。
どうしてですか？
少なくともこれで、この村に平和が戻るよ。
Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 or 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of a dam was still a ways away. But it was no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turned out from the beginning to end that it had already all been decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. Yep. There wasn't really a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here then, the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner.
平和がこの村に？
When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me, but her face remained indifferent, expressionless. And, oh no. And then her eyes narrowed slightly as she snickered.
これから毎年血生臭いことが起きるのに。
Man, she hella just predicts this shit. It's like she's seen the other chapters already.
リカちゃん、何の話だい？
As the wind blew her hair about, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while.
私ね。
Uh-oh. That's not Rika.
あと何年かすると殺されるの。
Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression, that had been cast in shadow, was smiling, amused, or resigned.
リカちゃんがどうして？
とても不愉快なことだけど、それも多分決まってることなの。
決まっているって、誰がそんなことを決めるんだい？
それを私も知りたいの。
Turning back to face me, she showed me a resolute expression for the first time. And after staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words.
ここは人の命を何とも思わない連中でいっぱいです。これを伝えても何も変わらないかもしれないけど、でも死という月を映す水面をかき消すためなら小石を投じることも あるかもしれない。
I had no idea what she was trying to say. It's just, I had to listen to every word with my body and soul, or at least that's what I thought.
来年の今日、そう。昭和54年の6月の今日、ダム現場の監督が殺されます。
Oh, okay, 1 year from now, okay. So it's not happening right now, it'll happen next year. Gotcha. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean that gruff old man I played mahjong with?
殺されるって。どうして？
She didn't answer, but she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. That wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No. It was as if she was already reporting the results. That sort of expression.
恐ろしい殺され方をした後、体中をバラバラに引き裂かれて捨てられてしまいます。
バラバラ殺人。
その翌年の昭和55年の6月の今日、聡子の両親が突き落とされて死にます。
Okay, so she's bringing up somebody that has not even been brought up at all in this chapter. I don't even know if Rika knows Satoko at this time. Satoko? It was the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story.
あるいは事故と言うべきかもしれない。不幸な事故。
The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with this, or with the lifeless look in her eyes. Excuse me, goddamn. Water really just is not helping me today.
そしてさらにその翌年の昭和56年の6月の今日、私の両親が殺されます。そしてさらに翌年の昭和57年の6月の今日、聡子の意地悪おばが頭を割られて死にます。
Okay, well that one's very specific.
そしてさらに翌年の昭和58年の6月の今日、あるいはその数日後か、私が殺されます。すべての死が予定調和なら、最後の死もまた予定のうちなのでしょうか。でもならばこれは一体誰の予定なの？
This village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were at the discretion of those who control the village. But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way that the last death would fit in with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals. But their goals were at odds with the last death, and that's why the last death was unrelated to them. But that last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably definitely, I dare say. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that?
私は幸せに生きたい。望みはそれだけ。大好きな友人たちに囲まれて、楽しく日々を過ごしたい。
Okay, well at least our goals kind of line up here. You know, me the reader, not me the Akasaka.
それだけなの。それ以上の何も望んでいないの。
リカちゃん。
死にたくない。
The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. Okay, we'll end the episode here. Mostly because I want to spend a minute or two to talk about my thoughts there. It does seem like, Rika's not an enemy. She's definitely kind of, you know, concerning. I don't want to say creepy, but she has that other side to her that maybe she is fully aware of? Or maybe that's the real her. I don't know. But I guess you can say it's exactly as Akasaka said. It's not much that we were hearing predictions. It's more like we were hearing, you know, something that is planned out. And that kind of goes back to some stuff I was saying in Chapter 3, where, you know, what Keiichi was trying to do was going against something that was already planned from the beginning. We were trying to change the course of events that were set to already occur. And obviously, from what we just heard here, either the whole village is planning this shit out from the very beginning, or something else is going on, something magical, and not in a good way magical, that is preventing things from changing. We're on a set course with some variables that change here and there, which we saw in the weather between the chapters, Sodako's uncle coming one of these times, and some other events. There are some variables, but if an event changes that's not based off of an available variable, then it's like the village just fucking goes inside out on itself, which we saw at the end of Chapter 3. Everything just kind of blew up in my face and fucked me in the ass. So, Rika has to be a key here. She has to be. She's not the enemy. She's a key to what the fuck is happening. And I don't know if that's related to the fact that she may be the embodiment of Oyashiro-sama, but I don't know. We've seen her die twice now. So, and the last chapter wasn't all that great, but it's exactly as she predicted. Thank you all for watching this episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that fancy jazz, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.